Hello everyone, this is the Professor Z, returning once again to delve into another chapter of Made in Abyss. Today, we'll be taking a deeper look at chapter 63.2, titled The Cursed Fleet. However, before I get started, there are two minor mistakes that I made in my chapter 63 review that I would like to address here. First, as it was pointed out to me by many of you in the comments, Krivali was climbing down the wall he was stuck on and not climbing up it. In hindsight, this is a bit obvious, but in my defense, there is no indication within the chapter itself of which direction he was going. The second mistake I wanted to address is the fact that the events of chapter 63 actually occurred prior to the main story. Similarly to my prior mistake, this was not indicated anywhere within the chapter itself. I was only made aware of this afterwards by you kind folks in the comments and those discussing it on the Made in Abyss subreddit. With all this out of the way, let's dive into this review, shall we? The chapter starts off with Team Rico further inspecting the area Nanache believed to have been purposefully altered. After chucking enough rocks at it to make a Geodude blush, Reg suggests that he check it out personally. Though Nanache is hesitant to send Reg into what could possibly be a trap, she determines that Reg, with his above average abilities, along with Rico's whistle in the events that things go south, would make him the best candidate for trap defusal duty. As Reg inspects a net he found underneath the ground, Rico requests that Faputa stay on watch for any possible hostiles. After tugging on the net, the ground around Reg erupts with an unknown gas. Nanache and Rico then hit the deck, expecting the gas to be some kind of poison, but the two soon recognize the scent of the gas as an Ibaho scent, a tool frequently used by delvers for tracking. Luckily, it doesn't seem to be laced with anything lethal, but the smell does repulse Reg enough that he even rejects touching the fluffiness that is Nanache. The issue with this trap is that it was placed in an area without the force field, meaning that it wasn't meant for any beasts of the abyss, since they rely on the force field to do, well, anything. So this must have been set up to mark other delvers, which Nanache realizes as Faputa comes crashing through the foliage. Faputa warns the group that something has reacted to the trap and is heading straight for them. Whatever it is, it's not alone, as it seems that there are two of them, one overlapping with the other. Before the group can figure out what overlapping means, their guests are almost on top of them. Making the decision to stand their ground, the group comes face to face with their adversaries, and it's Nishigoro and Tepeste? Well, apparently the confusion is mutual as everyone is scrambling to make sense of the situation. Akihito, what is this? This panel didn't need to exist. It's stuff like this that makes people question the efficacy of your manga, Akihito. Well, that and all the child murder. You know what? Do as much of this as you want, just please don't scar us any further. That aside, during all the confusion, Tepeste realizes that the opposing group is comprised of just children, while Nishigoro notices Rico's white whistle. Apparently, seeing a white whistle alongside several non-whistles has led Nishigoro to mistake Team Rico for a group known as Miko's Clan. Wait a minute. I'm sure it's nothing. Nishigoro, having some kind of beef with the actual Miko's clan, is halted from committing any acts of violence by Tepeste, who is apparently related in some way to the actual Miko's clan. Most likely, Miko's clan is the group Tepeste and Krivali were going to meet up with in the previous chapter. But that does raise the question as to why Tepeste would be helping Nishigoro if the two groups are opposing one another. After explaining the situation to Nishigoro, Tepeste disembarks from her back and asks Team Rico if they're okay. Luckily, no real damage was done, but Reg is still pissed about the smell, and Faputa doesn't seem too psyched about it either. Tepeste is actually impressed that the smell is all that's bothering them, instead of, the dismemberment that usually comes with stepping on a landmine. Unlike Tepeste, Nishigoro isn't too worried about all that, as she demands to know what the group is if not a part of Miko's clan. Rico quickly introduces herself and explains the group's objective of finding Liza, who she accidentally slips up and calls Mom. This little nugget of info though is enough to set off Nishigoro, who is apparently under the assumption that Liza's child had perished. But upon hearing Reg's explanation and seeing Liza's whistle, Nishigoro begins to calm down. Tepeste then chimes in, mentioning something called the power of imagination that a certain person is always talking about. She also points to Reg as a possible example of this. Nishigoro then mumbles about Reig being the same as a Shiru Mina before kind of shutting down. This is an interesting development. Up until now, we have known little to nothing about the creation of Reig and the other robotic characters introduced throughout the story. This power of imagination may not give us an exact answer as to who's making these bots, but it may finally explain how they're made, since they're clearly beyond the technological level of the outside world. Nishigoro then boots back up and mentions another name, Jushui, who could possibly be another result of the power of imagination. Addressing Tepeste, Nishigoro asks if Riko's group is qualified to become members. Members of what exactly is unclear, but Tepeste responds with, "Don't ask the prisoner of war." This further solidifies the idea that Miko's clan and Nishigoro's group known as Hail Hex are in some way at odds with one another, once again raising the question as to why Tepeste would be helping Hail Hex if she's on Miko's side. Moving on though, Nishigoro sheds her killing intent and requests that Team Riko follow her to meet their chief, also offering to clean the scent off Reig in return. This sudden change of demeanor is surprising to the group, except for Riko, who asks if their chief happens to be a white whistle. It seems that Nishigoro isn't the best with information, so she has to address some notes on her arm before giving a proper answer. Nishigoro confirms that the chief is indeed a white whistle, which pretty much cements the group's new destination, as Riko insists on meeting them. Though I'm not so sure about this, Riko, your track record with white whistles isn't exactly a desirable one. Though it seems that Riko has left all actual thought to Nanache as she begins to dissect Nishigoro's previous actions. We learn that apparently the shapes of white whistles are disclosed to the public to some extent, but it was upon seeing Prishka in undisclosed white whistle that Nishigoro came to the conclusion that Team Riko was also Miko's clan, meaning that Hail Hex is after an undisclosed white whistle with only a name to go off of. Realizing this, Nanache shares this info with the others as they proceed to follow Nishigoro and Tepeste. We then get a beautiful depiction of the sixth layer, followed by Faputa complaining that Reig smells funny. Riko then... Riko then comments on the name Miko, saying that it must be a code name, since it's the same name used in the children's stories told in North. Nanache agrees, since it's also the name that appears in Haria Mori's song, a tale that we had heard about in the previous chapter. Within these stories, Miko is depicted as a sort of prophet who can speak and relay the words of the incarnation of the Abyss. Now, if this is more than just a code name, and this person does have such powers, it's understandable why Hail Hex would want to get their hands on them. Powers like that would be quite powerful in a world that revolves around the Abyss. As the group progresses, Tepeste notices Reig's gentle knock, since it had previously belonged to Krivali. Noticing Tepeste staring off, Nishigoro asks if something is wrong. Tepeste notes how cautious yet calm this group of children are, despite being in the sixth layer, and wonders what sort of journey they must have gone on to get here. Oh, Tepeste, if only you knew of the wonders we've seen. Nishigoro then turns and thanks the group for following her this far. But what she says next is a tad odd. If you're here, it would be easy to harden time. Whatever the hell that means. Oh, you're not going to explain, Nishigoro? Well, thanks. I guess we'll just push that off to the side for now. But it doesn't end there, as she then asks the group if they believe in the existence of souls. Most of Team Riko is kinda on the fence, with Reig giving a not really, while Nanache wouldn't be surprised if they did. The member who does step forward and confidently declares that souls exist, though, is Faputa. She even states that she can tell that Nishigoro has accumulated quite a few. Now, this isn't the first time the existence of souls has been mentioned in Made in Abyss. Heck, the village arc mentions them quite a few times. However, this is the first time the idea of accumulating souls has been mentioned, and I feel that this concept will play a big part in the coming arc. The group then presses on, when Reig suddenly picks up on the scent of food, which even Faputa can't pick up on due to Reig's smell. Nishigoro then speaks into a device to contact their chief. Getting the okay to enter, Nishigoro lifts up a nearby wall, revealing a hidden passage behind it. Upon entering, the group is greeted by a peculiar looking man, who actually shares a striking resemblance to the one of the Umber Hands shown in the last chapter. Going further into the base, it's surprisingly well kept, and within a large room stands their chief in front of a large pot. the chief explains that just a little more than 300 meters below them is the 7th layer's final maelstrom, and that this base was built so that they could challenge it from deep inside the abyss. They then ask Riko what their goal is for traveling all the way down here, and really, Riko has an entire checklist of things that she wants to do. Which leads us to the final page of this chapter, as we are introduced to Captain Shreijo, leader of Hell Hex, and... Akihito, what the hell, man? Do you have some sort of new fetish you're trying to convey to us or something? Or is this just how you think women dress? Because if it's the latter, then sir, you clearly live in a better world than I do. Akihito's preferences aside, Shreijo finds it funny that Riko would have so much to do, as she makes a comment about the next 2,000 years nearing their start, which is something we also heard from another White Whistle who liked being incredibly vague. Shreijo then goes on to say that she would accept Riko as a resolute White Whistle, but only after a few tests, since apparently nothing can be easy down here. But more so because Shreijo is a coward, which I call BS on. You would never live down here and also be a coward. The two things go together like water and oil. Before we wrap up this page though, I'd like to address the two people in Nishigoro's arms. They're almost doll-like in appearance, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was Shiramina and Hyuso that Nishigoro had mentioned earlier, meaning that we might have two more Reg-like characters in the story now. Hopefully we'll get some more answers in the next chapter, because this is where chapter 63.2 comes to a close. And what a wild chapter it's been. We've definitely entered a new arc as new ideas and characters are introduced to the story. Let's just hope that these ones don't end up trying to dismantle Team Riko or end up dying the most horrible ways imaginable. Either way though, we'll have to wait until next time to find out. But what did you all think of this chapter? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Make sure you all liked the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more going forward. As always though, this has been the Professor Z, and I will see you all next time.